You're talking about some serious crimes that could have been committed here. Federal prosecutors are looking into this. I think also we need New York State investigation into this to see what state laws may have been broken, if it comes to the point where federal laws may not have been broken, although I do believe they are. So we're hoping that the U.S. Attorney's Office gets an opinion on this. They're on the case, and I think it's important that they expedite this because voters in New York certainly need to know whether their governor is a crook.
Crook, okay. Westchester County Executive and Republican candidate for Governor Rob Astorino with some very strong words for Andrew Cuomo, who's up in the polls by about 37 points, at least before this thing broke here. But nonetheless, this is a problem for the governor. Now, he even semi-quoted, did Mr. Astorino, one tricky dick, Richard Nixon there, famously defending himself in the Watergate scandal, saying, "I am not a crook." Cuomo still, of course, facing questions as we speak about a New York Times piece this week that put the spotlight on the Moreland Commission. Remember, the commission was a panel that the governor himself had created to clean up Albany. I think he said dredge the swamp. But then suddenly disbanded the panel right when they did a budget deal in the middle of the night, when the panel raised some questions. Then later about the governor's own administrations and actions. If you saw the piece, there is a whole bunch of open-ended questions this evening about that, both politically, also is there any criminal exposure? Well, to join us, one of our favorites, I'm sure she loves the subject, New York State Assembly member Shelley Mayer. She is a Democrat representing the 90th Assembly District, which includes the city of Yonkers. Okay, put it this way. The Moreland Commission made sense. It was an idea the governor championed and trumpeted. At the time when it disappeared, when the budget deal came down, did a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle say this was curious timing, or did it make sense that it ended in April?
It actually made sense if you were in the legislature and if you were following details, because the Moreland Commission was created primarily to deal with issues related to the Board of Elections and enforcement of existing election law in New York, which has been absolutely abysmal. Everyone would know that, whether candidate or not. In the budget, which was not passed in the middle of the night, by the way, at least not in our house.
All right.
It wasn't. I can't speak to the Senate. There were a number of provisions that addressed long-standing problems in election law enforcement, which have contributed to serious problems in Albany. And everyone acknowledges that, at least I do, and many of my colleagues did. For example, there was never enforcement of anything wrong. Anyone who has even run for the modest office of dog catcher knows that the Board of Elections never enforced any of its rules. So as part of the budget, there's an independent enforcement officer that is selected. This person has already been named, agreed to by everyone. That was one of the important things. Campaign finance, while there wasn't an agreement by the Moreland Commission, there was this suggestion that the comptroller's race this year should be subject to the public financing. There were other prosecutorial changes.
Tom DiNapoli loved that one, by the way.
Well, I know he didn't, and I don't disagree with him. I'm just saying there actually were substantive changes that came as a result, let me finish, as a result of the Moreland Commission and the governor and the legislature, let's not leave them out, agreeing that changes were needed to be made, and they were.
The point of the commission was accomplished, he maintained. However, you saw the piece, and the promise the governor said at the time was, hey, leave no stone unturned. You guys, I'm giving you subpoena power. I'm deputizing the commission here. You guys can go wherever you want, including my own office. Have at it. Time says, Larry Schwartz picks up the phone and calls Fitzpatrick, one of the commissioners, and says, drop it. Move on. Don't go here in the subpoena. And that investigation ended as it went to, I think, an ad agency that the governor had been previously involved in. The perception of this thing is it works unless it gets too close, and secondarily, it was a political cudgel to get everybody in line here to get the governor what he wanted. Now, you're going to tell me that isn't true. Did any lawmakers feel any pressure that if they crossed the governor, as long as the Moreland Commission was around, somebody was going to more than rap them on the knuckles?
Well, I think you're leaving out an important factor, which I, as a lawyer, was very sensitive to. The Moreland Commission wanted to issue subpoenas throughout the legislative world, and there's a lot of separation of powers, having been down this path as a lawyer, where I litigated what is the power of the executive vis-a-vis the legislature. It's supposed to be separate. You're not supposed to have unfettered. One of the reasons for these conversations about subpoenas was for them, apparently, to figure out the most effective way to get the information. If you issue a subpoena and the court quashes it, you're never going to get it. So the point was, and in fact in many of these cases, they negotiated better ways to get the information they wanted, and they were able to get the information. So I think, like for myself, I feel like they had conversations about the most effective ways to get it. They had to have unanimous agreement to do the subpoenas of the 3 co-chairs. They either agreed or didn't agree to do it. They conversed about the most effective way to get the information, and the large majority of the time, they got the information they wanted, and this information is put together, and we made some changes. So I think, yes, I understand the perception issues and the time raised, but so far, from what we can tell, this was a process, while it was not perfect, where the subpoenas were issued when it made sense, and when not, they got the information they needed.
But before, and Dan, I'll bring you this, before even the Times expose on this, when the Moreland Commission was disbanded, a lot of people said, wait, what's going on? U.S. Attorney got involved. A lot of us at the time, I'll speak for myself, said, what's Bahara getting involved in this? You don't got to cross the governor on this. What, are you crazy? This makes a little bit more sense from the outside right now. That is it possible that there were any active investigations that, for whatever reason, ended when the commission died, and he maintained that they were going to see this through the end. You've been on both sides of this to a degree. When you saw the U.S. Attorney deciding to resurrect the thing, did it raise your antenna?
It's certainly unusual. A key point here is that these commissioners were deputized as deputy attorney general. So that means they weren't under the authority of the governor. So that's important in terms of what he could do in terms of disbanding it or interfering. But even putting that aside, there's one key question. Were subpoenas that were going to be issued to entities that had alliances with Andrew Cuomo, were they told by his office not to issue those subpoenas because of who they were? Very simple question, and the answer to that is really the answer that we need here, and we don't know the answer to that. If they really called the commission and said, you can't subpoena certain information from certain entities because of their ties to the governor, then that's wrong.
And we should be clear. Even some of the commissioners who were quoted in the Times article the following day said, we received no such pressures. If there is, and it looks like there'll be an investigation, it'll come out. But as of now, no one's making that allegation. Politically, Dom, this is the first, let's talk in our commerce here. Astorino gets free airtime out of this, okay? I spoke to his spokesperson yesterday. This is like manna from heaven for these guys. They're doing national, they're getting free airtime with everybody. We're talking about this, etc. Does this resonate with the electorate, though? Do they care?
I don't think so. I don't think so at the end of the day. I think this is something that the governor is not happy with. Knowing this governor, he's bouncing off the walls in the governor's mansion after the story has come out. But remember, at the end of the day, Astorino, who I keep saying is going to be governor one day, but not this year, Astorino is still 40 points behind this governor in the polls, and he cannot compete financially. So this gives him, or he hasn't competed financially so far, this gives him new life. We'll see if he can capitalize on it.
Dan, I got less than 30 seconds. Where should the public look as to where the investigation goes next as a telltale if there's a there to this?
Well, if the U.S. Attorney keeps subpoenaing information, some of that's public, some of that's not public, and then does reputable news organizations such as the New York Times continue to provide more information to the public? And also, does the governor answer the allegations in the New York Times article? That's a really key thing that we're still waiting for.
Do you think we're going to hear from the governor sooner than later?
I just would point out that the governor's response to the New York Times prior to the article is available online. It's a very thoughtful answer to all of the questions that were asked, which the Times has on its website. So. What he does hereafter, I can't speak to that, but I would say is, someone who's not involved, you can go back and read his answers to the questions.
Okay, when we come back, this has nothing to do with politics, but it's an issue everybody ought to care about. When a woman says that she has been assaulted, or for that matter, anyone who's been a victim of sexual assault, it is standard practice to issue a rape kit to help police, medical personnel determine what happened. But we found some stats here that you may find shocking. Hundreds of thousands of kits never used in rape cases, never processed. We're going to tell you why and discuss that next.